Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And again, really sorry about the time. And then we would like to thank as well for the organizer for hosting our session today. And this session is brought to you as well by ALTERSEA in collaboration with LP3ES, IRASEC, and Universitas Diponegoro. And I'm truly your moderator representing ALTERSEA. And before we enter into our discussion, I would like to offer a brief overview of ALTERSEA and introduce our speakers. So ALTERSEA is an observatory based at the Centre Asie du Sud-Est, or we just can say Center for Southeast Asian Studies, based in Paris, France. And our focus lies in exploring social movements and activism, particularly within Southeast Asia, shedding light on the often overlooked systems that underpin local political action. In our mission, we collaborate closely with various scientific institutions, both within Southeast Asia and beyond, as well as engaging with working groups in the countries under our study. And today's session actually is a testament to this collaborative efforts. So now let's meet our speakers. First up, we have Gabriel Facal, anthropologist. Currently, he is a deputy director of the Institute for Research on Contemporary Southeast Asia, or IRASEC, and also co-founder of the Observatory of Political Alternatives in Southeast Asia, ALTERSEA. And his work focuses on various collective mobilizations, especially in Indonesia, such as national civil militias, radical Islamist groups, and more recently, collectives involved in the socio-environmental transition. Our next speaker is Wijayanto. He is an associate professor specializing in digital politics and democracy within the Department of Politics and Government at Universitas Diponegoro, Indonesia. And currently, he serves as the director of the Center for Media and Democracy at LP3ES. And over the past half decade, he has contributed significantly to the discourse on Indonesian democracy through a comprehensive book series published by LP3ES. And his work extends to various esteemed journals, including Contemporary Southeast Asia, the International Journal of Press, Politics, and Media Asia. His research focuses on the intersection of digital activism, state repression, cyber terrorism, cyber troops, hate speech, gender disinformation, media freedom, and the broader dynamics shaping digital democracy in Southeast Asia. His expertise underscores a deep commitment to understanding and analyzing the evolving landscape of digital politics within the region. Our next speaker is Wichuta Teeratanabodee, is a PhD student at the Department of Politics and International Studies, University of Cambridge. She is also a Cambridge Trust Scholar. Her research focuses on contemporary politics and transnational social movements in East and Southeast Asia, notably the Milk Tea Alliance. Wichuta was previously also a researcher at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And our last speaker is Bilay, or Zobi, is an inspiring Lisu scholar and a religiously trained human rights researcher from the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies, Mahidol University. He specializes in the nexus between human rights violations against the Rohingya and militant Buddhist nationalism in Burma. Zobi's research interest lies in freedom of religion, anthropology of religions, as well as the link between human rights violations and the religious teachings in Burma. He is currently exploring options for his PhD studies, focusing on the formation of Buddhist nationalist militias and the narrative of Buddhism needs protection in Burma after the 2021 military coup. So now I pass the micro to Gabriel.
So the chapter that we published in this book, it was written by nine contributors with a lot of diversity, researchers from Southeast Asia based in Europe and other way around. The researchers also are more or less committed to the movements. Some are very engaged, some other have a more distant stance toward the movement. There are also differences in terms of more or less theory or practice-oriented methods, qualitative or quantitative methods also, people who are doing their investigation in situ, and other ones with digital research tools. So we have a complementarity of approaches there with different legitimacies also to cover social movements in the respective countries of Southeast Asia. So for the people who don't know Southeast Asia, it's a very big region with 11 countries: Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Timor-Leste, Brunei Darussalam, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines. I hope I don't miss any of the countries with different regimes. Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos are closed regimes, authoritarian regimes, which limit the possibilities for social movements to express themselves and even to emerge. There's a lot of repression. We don't talk about Burma, which is under the war situation since the 1st February of 2021. In Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia as well, there are more democratic regimes, but which are threatened by many authoritarian methods. We have in Thailand also difficulties to reach democracy, institutional democracy at least. And Timor-Leste is the more democratic country, but with many difficulties, economic difficulties particularly. In terms of social movements, there is a lot of vitality for many decades. Many of the countries have endured colonialism, unless Thailand. And then we had pre-revolutionary organizations and movements beginning on the 19th century. And currently, it's only in Indonesia, a bit in the Philippines, in Thailand, and in Myanmar that we can find strong social movements with a lot of diversity regarding to the social political conditions and the transnational convergence and solidarity networks also for the different social movements. My introduction is much more short than I imagined because we have not much time, but just to say that all these social political conditions and their implication for social movement to express have also an impact on how we can do research on social movement. So Zobi here will talk about how the diaspora, for instance, has a very strong role in the capacity for civil society to express itself in Myanmar. Wijayanto will talk also about digital tools, which are very strong also in Thailand, covered by Wichuta here. She just arrived. Hello, Wichuta. So digital tools are a strong lever for social movements there. And we have many specificities also related to the structure itself of civil society, which is embedded in a strong clientelistic network, patron client networks. So there is a strong porosity between the state and civil society, and it also frames, of course, the capacity of civil movement to express themselves and our capacity as people from academia or from outside academia to research on social movements. One of the specificities, and we'll finish with that, of the contributors of this chapter, and more broadly of academia interested by social movement in Southeast Asia, is this strong porosity between the university, the community in the field, state actors, sometimes patron client networks. So this porosity enables us to have a participatory approach. Sometimes it makes us obliged to have this participatory approach also, because there are programs of politically oriented development programs to co-opt local communities through participatory approach. So there is a fine line to navigate in regard to this participatory approach. But my colleague will tell you more and better than me about these specificities of Southeast Asia. So I will give now the floor to our colleague Wijayanto. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you everyone for joining us. First of all, I would like to express our gratitude as well for Lawrence Cox for initiating the book and also the event. Despite a little bit of misunderstanding by the time we make it. Thank you, Gabriel, for starting with the introduction to give the context. And I guess because we don't have so much time, I will directly go to the screen. Share, can I share screen? All right. So my presentation will be entitled "Researching Social Movement in Indonesia: Some Insight on Methodological Matters." But I would like to start with some activities that we have conducted in the last 3 or 4 years, or even 5 years, which reflects actually the current state of Indonesian democracy, as well as civil society and civil social movement. So since 2021, our university, together with ALTERSEA actually, you can see the picture of Gabriel Facal there, also through we conducted a summer course which aimed to bring together scholars, activists, and journalists to discuss about social media activism, digital resilience, and resistance to democratic relation. First in Indonesia, and in 2022, we continue it. We discussed about digital activism, social movement, and resistance to democratic relation in Southeast Asia. And also in 2023, we discussed further about cyber troops, social media propaganda, and the rise of digital authoritarianism in Southeast Asia. You can see the scholars there. And we bring together also participants from many other parts of the world. This year, mid of the year, we will also have another summer course, and it will be about the dynamics of digital democracy in Southeast Asia, state repression, social media propaganda, and civil resistance. So with that theme, I would like to highlight that, in my view, the situation in Indonesia and elsewhere in Southeast Asia is very much about it, about the rise of state repression, as well as social media propaganda. But the good news is that at the same time, we have civil resistance. In today's presentation, I would like to elaborate more to what extent the civil resistance is actually significant or brings about a change on the fate of democracy in Indonesia. So if we take a look at the literature on Indonesian democracy in the last 5 years, you can find terminology such as defective democracy, democratic setbacks, regression, authoritarian practices, authoritarian innovations, authoritarian populism, which actually reflects the current state of Indonesian democracy until today. And I guess the situation is getting worse because of the thing that I would like to show you very soon. So maybe you follow the latest update in Indonesia. This is the headline in The Economist about dancing to victory, about the dance that leads the next president, the winner of the election, Prabowo, who is actually the former son-in-law of the former President Suharto. He was the authoritarian president during the New Order from 1965 to 1998. And there was a civil protest back then to force the resignation of the authoritarian president. And we since then have reform era. But move fast forward, less than 3 decades afterwards, we have his son, for his former son-in-law, as the next president, and he paired with the son of the current president in a political scandal that involved the violation of the constitution and the problem of ethics in the constitutional court. And now we have the package of, President Jokowi is often stereotyped, and this stereotype is not entirely wrong, as the little Suharto. So now we have the former son-in-law of Suharto and the son of the little Suharto pairing together and will lead Indonesia in at least the next 5 years. And one of the reasons underlying the victory is because of this. Is it audible for you?
5. Nah itu menurut saya skornya justru di bawah 5, Mas Gajar. Kalau 5 itu ketinggian, Pak Gajar. Terima kasih, Pak Gajar.
Disebut aja angkanya berapa gitu. Kayak saya gitu loh. Jangan di bawah 5, sebut aja berapa.
11, Mas. Dari 100. Apa skor yang Bapak?
Yeah. So it was through TikTok that, not just TikTok, but also social media. One of the reasons underlying his victory, even though, of course, there are a lot of other things, such as the use of force to the civil apparatus, threatened using the law in which they were threatened, their cases of corruption or corruption allegation, even though not necessary they are guilty, to be brought into the court, and it was successful to to make them supporting the regime, and more we witnessed some of them revealing their stories publicly, and there are also social funding as well to the public in the pork barrel politics, and there's also vote buying too. So so many factors underlying his victory, and so we have social media propaganda happening here, and we also have another thing, which is the digital repression. This is one of the article that we published in Contemporary South Asia about how the protest of the academics to the problematic law created by the government, the revision of the law on anti-corruption body, and those academics united in a WhatsApp group and one by one they got this kind of phone calls. This is the picture of my cell phone back then, how I got phone calls from foreign number from all over the world. And afterwards, not everyone, I didn't get it, but some of us, the WhatsApp were hijacked. And this WhatsApp then spreading message, they changed position into supporting the policy of the government. So this is another feature. So state repression, digital repression. And this is the picture that I presented to you in the first page, in the first slide, in my title slide. And this one was a story about how two activists discussing in YouTube in a podcast about one minister, and they were then prosecuted. After years of struggle, they were finally released. However, it's already enough for creating a chilling climate for freedom of expression. So there's another story of repression, and this one is using the law. So not surprising if our colleague Anders Uven, for instance, writing about the rise of digital repression under Joko Widodo. And this is another story of social media propaganda in the revision of KPK law on Indonesian anti-corruption body that has explained before. So beside the repression to the protest, there's also attempt to manipulate public opinion by framing that the anti-corruption body that has been successfully sending all the guilty politicians to jail were infiltrated by Taliban, by Islamic hardliners. And it's enough to make the public doubting the anti-corruption body. I will move very fast to. So in general picture, we found that the underlying the Indonesian democratic creation, which now includes the politic dynasty, as well as state repression, social media propaganda, and any other symptoms. There were structural factors like oligarchy, elite capture, and then institutional law, the double function of the military and police, which the police was already has a double function, and military will soon follow, and the use of a law for repressing the activists, and also the agency factors in which the executive leader on the president himself, who was perceived as part of the progressive power or democratic actor, abandoned the democratic values, and also some of the elected parliamentary members. So now we have, in other hand, the rising power of the oligarchy, and in one hand we have the powerful oligarchy, and in other hand we have actually fragmented civil society, and we have the situation which is theorized by Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson as this political Leviathan. So we have somewhere here. The question that troubles my mind and also my fellow activists in Indonesia, then why the civil society is so weak to tame the oligarch, not even tame, to just bring alternative views. Because for instance, we have Prabowo and Gibran, which is actually the personification of the new order, the authoritarian power. They came to victory convincingly. So what happens? What can we do to strengthen the civil society? Yeah, this is another picture of how actually protests actually happening all over Indonesian universities, but it's not enough to stop the violation of the Constitution and the authoritarian forces keep going on. Currently, my institution, myself, with some colleagues, we try to redefine, to conduct research, to examine to what extent actually our society is weak or strong, and what can we do to strengthen it. So we start with trying to find a definition of civil society. So we found that there were some scholars who see civil society as association, civil society as space, and the scholars you can read there. Some of them see it as values, some of them see it as networks. And we try to combine in our research and as well as action. So in the research part, we would like to conduct a focus group discussion, social network analysis, and we will conduct survey. We'll combine it with survey involving around 1,600 civil society activists, and including civil society organization in more than 500 regency and cities in Indonesia, to really examine how strong or how weak actually the current civil society organization condition is. And we also will do 5 case studies, and we will combine it with action, with the hope that in the end we will be able to meet our purpose, strengthening civil society amid ongoing democratization in Indonesia in the context of digital revolution. Because we see that the role of the internet is very important, and we cannot talk about democracy and also social movement without talking about this technological aspect. So, and the challenge that we are currently facing is to redefine civil society as well as a social movement in a way that can include the recent trend in the movement. For instance, the massive protests about the corrupt election that is going on. It doesn't have impact because the authoritarian forces keep on running. However, there's already a lot of protests. How will we understand them? Is it enough to say that actually we feel just that, or maybe it's an embryo for the next movement? But if it's an embryo for the next movement, why we do have to wait for so long? Because it's already more than 2 decades after the reform era, and it seems like we move nowhere, nowhere near to the democratic consolidation, nowhere near to the better situation in politics, and it's even getting, to quote some of the words that we like to use in the protests, the dark part of our democracy. I guess I will end my presentation there because I'm aware that we don't have so much time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wija. So, we just continue directly to Wichuta. The micro is yours, Wichuta.
Truly, and hi everyone, wherever you are. Thank you for being here today. I'm Wichuta, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, and I'm studying social movements and more like transnational movements in East and Southeast Asia. But today I'm going to talk about social movements of my country, which is Thailand, and how it's been like in the past 4 or 5 years, because a lot of things have happened. And from there, we'll also see how the situations have been and has impacted the country, the government, as well as the protesters themselves. I'll just try to go as chronologically as possible, and I'll conclude with some pressing topics I think people interested in social movements in Thailand might be interested in covering in research. Okay, let's start. So if anyone or someone want to understand Thailand's contentious politics nowadays, I think, in my personal opinion, a very good place to start is 2014, what happened in 2014, there was a coup. In May 2014, the Thai military launched a coup, which was actually the second coup in the 21st century. A lot of times when there's a coup in Thailand, what would happen is the military would introduce kind of an interim government, which is usually themselves. And after a year or so, they'll revise the constitution, the law here and there a little bit, and will then also allow, would maybe capture some people, and then within a year also, so short-ish time, will then allow the country to have the second election or another election. But 2014 was quite a different time in that the military staged a coup and took power to stay for 5 years. So Thailand didn't have any election until March 2019. And during that election, so finally kind of something hopeful happened, right? There seemed to be some hope again with an introduction, an emergence of this new progressive party called the Future Forward Party. They were very new, and they carried some progressive outlook and agendas with them. So unsurprisingly, they were quite popular among young people. And a lot of those were people who went through a transition from a child or a teen to adulthood during that 5-year period of political gridlock under the military. Nevertheless, although there was some hope, right, the election resulted in the military returning to power because during the 5-year time in power, they kind of rewrote the constitution, changing some rules and laws about the election. So in other words, even though there was an election, it wasn't a completely free and a fair one. So fast forward 2020, we have still under the military regime. Just within 1 year following the election in 2019, then the Future Forward Party, the Progressive Party, was dissolved. And this sparked a wave of campus protest movements in Thailand, across the country actually. And the enthusiasm of university students in Thai politics is something quite normal. We've seen it all the time in the past decades since the Siamese Revolution in 1932. But I think one important thing to keep in mind here, and a lot of times observers of Thai politics tend to attribute the emergence of the protest to the dissolution of Future Forward Party. But I think the anger and resentment of the people were probably built throughout a longer period of time, including the 5 years under the military rule, right? And the Future Forward Party incident probably was just like a trigger. And so the protest broke out, and it got bigger because people started mobilizing more, and more people started to join, and especially in the latter half of the year. And the agenda initially started with the resignation of the prime minister, which is like a military man. And then it got expanded to more and more. It started to include something like gender equality, poverty reduction, COVID-19 vaccinations, to the dissolution of the parliament, reforming the monarchy, and to quite extreme that we've never seen before, I think, at least in the public space, is the to abolish the monarchy. So there are a lot of diverse range of opinions here, especially when you see online, the way people talk, or the topics are quite different. And so they're not one homogeneous and unified group. And I even did see some comments online about oh, maybe we should try the French Revolution model. So a lot of things were going on. So yeah, and people would gather on streets as well almost every day, as well as joining an online media on social media like Twitter. And on Twitter, you'll see also hashtags that represent each day of the protest, like hashtag protest 19 June, hashtag protest 21st June, 22nd June, every day. And eventually the police brought out some tear gas, rubber bullets, and water cannons. And there was also a lot of confrontations between the two sides, right? People got hurt, they felt fatigued. It's been quite a while, it's been over a year. A lot of them got arrested and jailed. So there was also COVID. So these movements eventually subsided in the latter half of 2021, but they were there for about a year and almost 2 years. So well, with this whole thing going on, what have academics said about it, this wave of protest? And I'm sorry, I don't have a slide. I'll try to be to talk in a way that is easy to understand as possible. If you're interested in this wave of protest, I think one kind of go-to place and that you can check out is a special issue on critical Asian studies, right? They have a special issue about this wave of protest. There's Duncan McCargo who look into the protests from a very strategic perspective. What are the profiles of the protesters? Who are they? Like, what are their characteristics? What do they want? How are they mobilizing, right? And have they been able to achieve anything? So then what do they need, and what are their goals? So like the basic questions and answers. There's also Aim Sinpeng, who is at the University of Sydney, and she looks at it from the digital perspective, right? Also Janjira Sombatpunsiri, she also does the digital perspective of the movements. There's also Kanokratla Chusukun at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, and she focuses more on young people. And by young people, I mean middle and high school students, because these are new groups of people that we have seen join protests. Previously, it was mostly university students in other waves of protests. But for this wave, we saw high school and middle school students. So, what's going on in Thai society, right? And there's also Anuson Unno, who is studying it towards the end of the protest, where there were more confrontations between the police and the protesters. And yeah, there's also someone who tried to compare Thai protests with protests in other countries, such as Hong Kong as well. Okay, so now we're back to the story. Like, a lot seemed to have been covered, especially when it comes to social movements in Thailand at that period when it was happening. And now it's been nearly 3 years since, it's vanished. So what's been happening since then? The protest ended in 2021, and following that, there was still a handful of activist groups who have been active, who have been continuing their advocacy for issues that they care about. Ending military conscription, for example, is one of the issues. Gender equality is still there. Also, same-sex marriage, right? But most people, or like the crowds or the public that made like the mass movement, seem to have gone back and go about their life. Right. And in 2023, so 2 years after the protest is done, Thailand had another election. And this time, the successor of the Future Forward Party that was dissolved, right? Their new name is now Move Forward. So this party won like quite overwhelmingly. And this came very unexpectedly to most people who observe Thai politics. So but now also the settlement of the government and how they formed the government was kind of also disrupted by the constitution as well. And now they're not the government, they're just opposition party. And now their case, potential of dissolution, just kind of going the same path with the Future Forward Party, is now with the Constitutional Court of Thailand, who's now kind of considering. So we start seeing already kind of this history maybe or might be repeating itself. And in a few weeks, we'll see again whether they will be dissolved or not. But so these are like a comprehensive overview of Thai politics, the protests, and how things have been, like very briefly. So how can we do research on social movements if someone want to, come in and do research on social movement about Thailand or Thai protests right now? And I think there are quite a lot of gaps to fill now that the protests have ended, right? One question I have is how much and in which way the movements made an impact on Thai politics. They might appear like they failed because they technically did not achieve any of their demands. They didn't kick out the prime minister at that time. They didn't revise any law related to the monarchy, and they didn't have the parliament dissolved. But I think when we look at the bigger picture and kind of like longer time period, right? Maybe there might be some connection between the victory of the Move Forward Party in 2023 that won so overwhelmingly. So I think there's some connections here that maybe if you're interested, you can look towards it. And the second aspect is the aspect of repression. And because from 2014 throughout 2023, right, we were still kind of under this military man. And now that there's been a change of hand in the government, how have things been in terms of state repression online and offline? So I think this aspect is still like hasn't really been covered. And now that the topic of lèse majesté or like the revision of laws related to the monarchy seems to have been a little more normalized, maybe it's a good time to carefully enter this space of conversation in academia and talk about it with caution, of course. And another important aspect of the movement that I think hasn't really been sufficiently covered, and this is also my PhD project, so I'll just end after this point, is the transnational aspects, right? There seem to be, at the time of the movement, as well as before and after actually, some connections that Thai protesters and activists made with protesters and activists of other countries, including but not limited to Myanmar, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. And Hong Kong and Myanmar especially also had or have like protests going on at the time. So what exactly these transnational connections mean, and what are their purposes, and how they are like now that most of the activists and protests are laying low and or have moved to other countries. Yeah, these are some of the questions that I think are pressing and would be good if anyone entering the space of Thai social movements in Thai politics would consider covering. And I think I'll end my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wichuta. It's very interesting. Now we come to our final speaker, Zobi, who is not, of course, not least in importance. So the micro is yours, Zobi.
Hello everyone. Can you all hear me well? Okay. So thank you so much for this chance to share my experience regarding to social movements in Southeast Asia, primarily Burma, Myanmar. So today I would like to talk about two parts of my presentations. The first one will be what is happening in Burma, and the second one will be what kind of limitation that the Burmese researchers or researcher studies about Burma facing today after the coup, from my humble knowledge. So in terms of social movement, Myanmar is infamous for 1988 student uprisings and 2017 Saffron Revolution, which was led by the Buddhist monks to protest the military, and they stood out for the equality and the poverty of the citizens of Burma. And in 2015, 2012, there was another notorious movement was led by Mabata, which is one of the religious extremist Buddhist group. They especially protested against the Rohingya community, Muslim community of the Northern Rakhine states. So actually, I'm currently working on that, how Buddhist nationalism and human rights violations link each other, especially the human rights violations against the Rohingya community, of course. I would like to highlight a little bit on what is happening and what had happened in Burma after 1st of February 2021. Everyone might know that on 1st of February 2021, the Myanmar military, also known as the Tatmadaw, the perpetrator of gross human rights violations, staged a coup. And their justifications actually was, these actions was that they said that there were some flaws on the result of the November 2020 general elections or allegation of voting fraud there. So Aung San Suu Kyi, the then state councillor, and President U Win Myint were arrested on the very 1st of February 2021. And on 2nd of February, the civil disobedience movement, which is kind of non-violence movement, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi from India and all the civil servants working for the governments in response to the military coup, was launched. And on the 7th of February, the very first protest erupted nationwide, calling for the release of all civilians, leaders, and the government be allowed to take its place in parliament as well. On the 9th of February, anti-coup protester, the very first one, Nya Kai, was shot to her head, and she was passed away in capital Naypyidaw City on the 19th of February. And on May 2021, the NUG National Unity Government, parallel government, was announced to their establishments of People's Defense Force Group, we call it PDF, who are kind of arming to fight against the SAC, in a way, the Myanmar military Tatmadaw as well. According to the AAPP, the association that is working for the prisoners of Burma, they reported that as of 23rd of April 2024, 26,555 unarmed civilians were arrested. 20,352 were still detained, including sentenced, and 4,920 were killed by the junta, and 6,203 were released by the amnesty. This is the figures from AAPP as of 23rd April 2024. Here, you may notice that every movement or actions in response to a coup initiated as a non-violence kind of way. However, people of Burma resort violence too. So a lot of alliances and cooperative attacks could be seen all over Burma, and the National Unity Government questionably claim that they have control over 60% of Burma as well. Number of clashes and skirmishes in whole Burma is surging day by day. There are a lot of airstrikes, a lot of bombing, a lot of artillery attack to civilians every day. The most visible and latest battle between the collaborated armed force groups and KNU, Karen National Union, against SAC Myanmar military led the forced displacement to the neighboring country, Thailand. I think the figure couldn't be confirmed yet, but there are a lot of people cross over Thailand side as well. But among the brutal, inhumane crackdowns of military, I think activism, non-violence way is still happening in Burma, especially inside Burma and neighboring country, especially Thailand. For example, numerous of non-violence peace protests against military inside Burma is still happening, even in the city center downtown of Yangon, including, for example, hanging banners and flash mobs inside the town. In the neighboring country, especially Thailand, Chiang Mai, and Bangkok, the activist community have strong connections with the local activist community, meaning the Thai activist community. They are collaboratively working hard on Myanmar political issues, I would say. And for example, the celebration of International Women's Days and the event led by respective universities that I have prepared a little bit that PowerPoint. Some PowerPoints had happened in the Taipei Gate, which was led by the human rights activists from Thailand side, and Burma human rights activists were part of it. So this is the political landscape, and this political sectors or issue made the space of the researcher shrink more compared to other previous years, I would say. So in second part of my presentations, I would like to highlight what kind of limitations that we as a researcher are facing as given by the political and civil war society situations in Burma. Actually, this discussion is only based on my previous field research and fieldwork or interview process. So first one, after February 1st, 2021 coup in Myanmar, discussion about politics is significantly sensitive, and the internet repressions, internet crackdown, limit the security of all the interviewees, I would say. But for my case, I use paid VPN for the whole process of the interview and to avoid especially the military intervention in the process of my interview. Uh, there are a lot of reports that the Myanmar military intervene in the phone call of the human rights activists each other. So I am so scared of that. So I use encrypted software like Signal majorly, and then I also use paid VPN for that. And for my case, discussing about religion and politics in Myanmar is quite vulnerable, I would say. So I try to use the inclusive words or terms to avoid possible tension between interviewees and the interviewer, because political situations makes all the people of Burma a little bit sensitive. So whenever the terminology or the words that you're using would impact to their psychological situations as well. So wordings and using some sort of specific terminology is quite important for Myanmar studies people, I would say. And thirdly, the interviewee stress really, really matters. After 2021 coup, no one is there enough to talk about politics outrageously or outspokenly because of the military targets and the military arbitrary detentions of all the human rights activist community. So it's very difficult to talk about politics in Myanmar civil society as well. So we have to build trust before talking to them as much as we can. So if you could do that, it would be very, very easy for you. And data verification, it's also very important at the moment. I would say after the coup, you may see a lot of researchers, academics are also arbitrarily targeted by Myanmar military. That's why they have to flee the country. A majority of them are now in exile. The figure might be difficult to mention. However, likely more than 50% of the researchers or academics working on military-related topics are outside of the country at the moment, I would say. I think it limits the researcher to have primary data sources from the ground. At the same time, travel restriction and civil war-like situations limits the researchers to be on the ground as well. So it would be very difficult for you to have primary data sources. Of course, we are in the information technology era. We can obviously reach out to interviewee using by the social media or everything. However, at the same time, you have to be very careful that the military intervention is still existed in every social media platform as well. In the context of exile, I would say the pursuits of Myanmar researcher never stop in exile as well. A lot of them are still working on their interest, prestigious universities such as Mahidol University, Chulalongkorn University, Chiang Mai University provide them safe space to pursue their studies or their research at the moment, I would say. So the anonymity, the last one, the anonymity of the key informants still matters after the coup, because as I mentioned earlier, the trust always matters, and the confidentialities at the same time, anonymity of the key informants still matters after 2021 military coup. So this is what I would like to discuss and highlight for today's presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zobi. Again, we learned a lot of things from you. Thank you again. So we arrive at the question and answer session. So if you have any question, please feel free to raise your hands virtually, or you can type your question into the chat box and then I can read them for you, or I can call your name to ask your question directly. So, any question for the speakers? While we're waiting, perhaps Gabriel, you would like to add something?
No particular question. I think that we can talk whenever we want among our group, and we already share a lot of questions daily. But yeah, just a remark that in Thailand, as in Indonesia, there has been these strong coalitions between so-called progressive parties and conservative candidates. So it's striking to see how the ideological discourses are being put backward. But the situations are very different. Indonesia has a strong institutional democracy, even if not very functional democracy, and endangered democracy as well. Whereas in Thailand, it's not democracy, but there is a strong aspiration from the people for democracy. So we can see two different trajectories. But at the government and the political parties level, dominant political parties level, there is the same trend of mega coalitions and arrangements after the votes. So we can see that there is an inter-elite arrangement actually.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. So, any questions from the audience? Yes.
Hello. May I just
Wijayanto.
start straight away?
Okay, hello.
Sorry, this is not my name.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I entered the session very quickly from the device of my husband. That's why it's his name on the screen. Diana Lengawa, my name. I'm currently associate researcher at the Austrian Academy of Sciences, planning a research on student activism in Indonesia. And I wanted to address my question to Pa Wijayanto. Anyway, thank you to everybody for the presentations. But my question to Pa Wijayanto is particularly related to the digital aspect of his research and the research of the institutions he's at. Thinking of the social movement back then in 1998, when students went to the street in a very organized manner, I was wondering, do you have any observations regarding the digital aspects of student activism today, whether digital era or maybe the methods, the ways of organizations have changed in so far that might not in the future be able to see anything similar to the 1998 movement that was able to bring down Suharto. I was wondering whether there is whether one can attempt an explanation regarding this digital aspect of student activism today. Whether you see any connections between that and what we can expect from students and their capacity of changing the regime or of bringing about any bigger political changes we saw it back then in the 1998. And also, I have also a second question to the authors of the chapter, because you've been working together as in the book. I wondered whether you see what similarities you see between digital activism and activism on the ground, and the capacities of activism on the ground in a comparative perspective. Since you have authors from working on Myanmar, on Thailand, Indonesia. Can you see any similarities between what happens online and what happens offline, particularly in terms of this diversity of topics that enters into the discourse once it is in its high peak and then how things go back to some kind of more everyday activist practices on a daily level that are separated in their different fields. Yeah, I hope these questions were not completely confusing or confusing more than expected. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Is it right?
Diana.
Diana. Okay, thank you, Diana, for your question. Okay, Wija, perhaps you can give a brief
Okay.
answer. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Diana, for your question. I'm sorry, I'm not opening my Zoom because I have a bad signal here. So, Diana, your question is actually also my question too, to be quite frank. Yes, if we take a look at the literature, right, about digital politics or digital democracy in Indonesia, we can divide into periods, I guess. First, the period from 1998 to maybe 2007, or let's say 2012 or 2011, and then the literature in 2012 until now. And the first phase of the literature is quite optimistic. You know, we see the role of the internet to strengthening the civil activism, to strengthening democracy, and we have back then also a better democracy. At least in terms of democracy index released by EU, for instance, or we have an institution like the anti-corruption body KPK. We overthrow the corrupt regime, the alternate regime in 1998. But then, when the democracy is regressing, we also have the internet used by the power holders to repress critical dissent, to to do social media propaganda, to weaken the democracy. So, on your question about when will it be, or do I see in the future that the student protests or civil society protests in general will be able to make use of the internet to tame the oligarchs? That's my term, or to compete with the authoritarian forces. I guess it's gonna be not just an epistemological question, but also action question. So I guess the answer will be depend on how the activists learn from their mistakes in the past. The mistakes, quote unquote, we trusted so much that Jokowi will bring hope for our democracy, right? And we were disappointed. We have to face the bitter truth that he's not. And I guess the civil society have to learn, activists like me, have to learn that we have to rely on ourselves. We have to, better prepare our movement, and we have to reorganize ourselves, and we learn from the mistake from the past, and let's see what we can do. And our research right now, the research that I'm currently doing in LP3S with my colleagues, is very much about it. So first, we would like to investigate really about the current state of our civil society. So we have heard a lot about that our civil society is fragmented, that our movement is easily tamed, not significant. But however, to what extent? So we would like to combine three kind of methods. First is a survey involving more than 500 of civil society organizations across the archipelago, and surveying around 1,600 activists, and also social network analysis. We want to examine the movement in the last 5 years based on the discourse in the internet. And the last one, we will do the study cases of 15 organizations across different themes, gender, environment, education, and so forth and so forth. And the expectation is that we will know exactly what we are lack of and what we can do to develop it. And the last one is that in this for this regard, we have to come with a definition of civil society that includes, in my view, not just organization or association like the Tocqueville and Notion, or even public sphere only like Gramsci and Notion, but also the movement aspect as well. So it will be the challenge that we are trying to come up with something, and we will follow this up with the action as well to strengthen the capacity of the civil society. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is extremely interesting. I hope to hear more from this research. Is it just starting? Excuse me, I have this question between.
Yes, the research is just started, and if you would like to discuss more, I guess Truly can write my email there in the Zoom, and I will be happy to discuss further about it, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you
Terima
again,
kasih
Diana,
kembali.
for your questions. And for those who would like to continue our discussion or who needs further informations, you may find us in our website. I just shared our website in the chat box. And there are also our email address. And now we arrive at the end of our discussion. So thank you once more for joining us today. We apologize again for the time misunderstanding. And we look forward to seeing you at the future events. And of course, thank you again for Lawrence and Anna and other colleagues for organizing this wonderful session and publication, of course. Thank you.